Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another great Lunch and Learn here with the Purchasing Division. Today we have our topic is best practices for transportation procurements. And with me, I have Senior Purchasing Manager Sonia Lovett and Purchasing Assistant Manager Windelle Jean-Pierre. And they're both going to come on camera, wave Sonia and Windelle, and I will give you just a brief background about both of them. So Sonia is a senior purchasing manager with Broward County's purchasing division with over 25 years of experience in managing procurement systems and policy development in federal, state, local, and nonprofit organizations. Prior to joining Broward County, Sonia served as the director of contract management for a community-based nonprofit agency after spending over 20 years at a state agency in multiple roles, overseeing procurement, contract administration, contract management, and grant management. Sonia is a certified project management professional, PMP, holds a certified public procurement officer certification, and is a graduate of Florida International University with a master's degree in public administration. So that's our Sonia. And with her co-presenting with Sonia today is Windelle Jean-Pierre, who is currently a purchasing assistant manager in the transportation section of the purchasing division, who's responsible for procuring commodities, professional services, and construction, to name a few. She is a proud graduate of Barry University with a bachelor's in business administration and pre-law. She was inspired to pursue a career in procurement after being employed as an administrative coordinator within the purchasing division. Prior to working at Broward County, she was a process support specialist, now known as a loan modification specialist at Bank of America, where she was responsible for liaising between the homeowner and the lender to assist homeowners in obtaining loan modifications, such as the Home Affordable Modification Program with various investors such as Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Windelle has 8 years experience in public procurement and holds a certified professional public buyer and NIGP certified procurement professional certifications. All right, so welcome to both Sonia and Windelle. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to them. They will be doing today's presentation on best practices for transportation procurements. As always, if you guys have any burning questions that that arise while they're speaking, please feel free to type them in the chat and we'll address those towards the end. So without further ado, Sonia and Windelle.
Thank you very much, Alexa, and thank you for allowing us to share some of our best practices here in the transportation procurement. And so let's talk about what we're going to cover today. So we're going to give you a brief overview of the transportation section, FTA regulations and guidelines, how to utilize those FTA funds, surtax funds, FDOT programs, and then leave you with some important tips that will help you understand how we do our transportation section and how to use the funds that we have and be able to purchase things with the federal regulations, surtax regulations, and also state regulations. So a little bit about the transportation procurement section. So we have 7 procurement professionals, including myself, and we have 4 dedicated to the transportation department who support multiple divisions such as the fleet, paratransit, capital projects, and maintenance. We also work with other client agencies such as the port, water, wastewater, highway construction, and engineering. And we hope to streamline processes to support major economic engines, such as the airport, ports, OESPD, and other areas. So it is said that there are 5 major categories in government procurement. It's construction, supplies and materials, professional services, IT, and of course, transportation. So what's so special about our transportation procurement? Because we buy goods and services just like all the other areas in purchasing, but we are unique as we touch pretty much every type of procurement method. We do RFPs, ITBs, sole sources, other governmental contracts such as piggybacks, cooperative agreements, QVLs, and also informals. We solicit for construction projects, architecture and design. We buy buses, boats, cars, mobile cameras, fuel, cranes, and the list goes on. And the transportation section sources all types, all the vehicles that we use in our fleet. And we also support those vehicles by purchasing parts, supplies, services, repair and maintenance of those items. So while our processes are the same, transportation has also some additional requirements based on the various funding sources that we have, because we always want to make sure we are audit ready at all times. So an overview about what funding sources we have. We have general funds, Federal Transportation Administration, we have surtax funds, and we also have FDOT. And while we have those several different sources, our primary funding is FTA and surtax. So let's talk a little bit more about the FTA funds and the additional requirements that must be met. So, little tidbit, the Federal Transportation Administration turned 60 this year. It went into sorry, sorry. So Federal Transportation Administration turned 60 this year. It supplies over 1.5 billion in funds for American-made transit buses. They also do developmental grants that's about 13.1 million to 19 different communities. It oversees safety and oversight. It's policy development, hazard investigation, data collection, risk analysis. It also supports infrastructure investment, where it pours in over $20 billion annually to support and expand public transit services. It provides annual formula grants to transit agencies nationwide and also gives discretionary funding to competitive process. It supports innovation as well to improve operations, enhance travelers' experiences, drive economic growth in America's communities, and provides research in safety, mobility, innovation, and infrastructure. It also supports what they call smart cities, mobility on demand, enhancing mobility innovation, and artificial intelligence. So Broward County Transit uses FTA to purchase buses, vehicles, infrastructure improvements, security-led improvements, as well as information technology. So BCT typically identifies projects by developing a comprehensive capital program, prioritizing projects based on various criteria, and then they obtain FTA approval to get those funds and implement projects using FTA funds. What I'm going to do is turn over to Windelle so she could talk a little bit more about how those funds come into our contracts and how do we use them to solicit for services and products throughout the county. Windelle.
Thank you, Sonia. Well, if you're all familiar with the original process, you know that you have to submit a requisition into purchasing. So in addition to the normal documents that you provide, you'll also include these documents that are on the screen. It's the contract term form, independent cost estimate form, lease versus purchase analysis form, and also the RQM document package checklist supplement. The contract term form is used to clearly define the duration and the key terms of the contract. So any FTA funded contracts, well, you'll have to provide this form, and that form helps everyone understand what the contract period is, including start and end dates, and if there are any renewal or extension options. For the independent cost estimate or ICE form, this form is used to provide the expected cost of the goods and or services that you'll be purchasing before you receive your bids or proposals. For the lease versus purchase analysis, this form is used to help determine the most cost-effective and practical option of leasing versus purchasing equipment, vehicles, or other assets. Now, in addition to providing the requisition package checklist, We also have the RQM document package checklist supplement that is to be provided in addition to that form. And this basically outlines the specific documents that you'll need to include. And so it's basically a checklist of what those documents are, the 3 documents that I listed up top. And later in the presentation, I'll show you where you can actually find these documents. But each form plays a crucial role in ensuring that transit agencies make well-informed, cost-effective, and compliant decisions in the management and execution of FTA-funded projects. So here I'll show what the process is in procuring the FTA projects. If you are all familiar with an FTA supplement, this document is included within the solicitation for all FTA-funded projects, and it's to ensure compliance with specific federal requirements and guidelines. The supplement provides detailed instructions and documentation requirements that are necessary for the solicitation to meet the FTA standards. So we in purchasing, we will work with the Broward County Transportation Department's FTA compliance group to complete the FTA supplement to ensure that we are maintaining it with all the required federal clauses. Now, once the solicitation package is complete, that solicitation package is sent to the FTA compliance group for review. And what they'll do is they'll assess the solicitation documents and provide that compliance review, which will detail the required documents that are to be submitted by the responding bidders. So the purpose of that compliance review prior to the solicitation advertisement is to ensure that the solicitation includes all the related documents and it adheres to the FTA regulations and guidelines. And that review, in addition to that, that review will also mitigate any risk. It'll identify potential issues that may arise with the solicitation. It'll confirm project scope, budget, procurement strategies that align with the federal funding. And it'll also ensure that all the necessary documents, as I stated earlier, are complete and accurate. Now, once the FTA compliance review is completed, the solicitation is revised in according to the recommendations provided, and the required FTA documents are clearly specified within the solicitation documents as well. Now, per the FTA guidelines, the solicitation should be advertised at least 14 days to allow adequate competition. And once that advertisement ends, we in purchasing proceed to review the vendor responses for award recommendation. And at this point, once we have conducted our review to determine the lowest responsible bidder, we'll forward that recommendation to the FTA compliance group while also obtaining the user concurrence for completion of an FTA compliance award review. And by conducting this review, it's basically to safeguard the integrity of the procurement process and also promote best practices and ensure successful project execution that are in line with the federal standards. Now, upon award, we in purchasing have to complete an FTA checklist, and that's completed in addition to our award package folder checklist. And that's to ensure that we've completed all the necessary steps to ensure that the FTA project is completed accurately and in line with the FTA guidelines. Now, I did mention the FTA supplement, and here on the screen are the documents that are typically included within that supplement. Some documents are not required for the solicitation, and again, that is based on the FTA compliance review. But just a brief overview of each document: the application for evaluation of good faith effort. It's just basically the same document that you guys are familiar with. If the bidders cannot meet the DBE goal, they'll submit an application for evaluation of good faith effort, just to show that they've attempted. For the government-wide debarment and suspension certification, that certifies that the contractor is not excluded from participating in federal programs due to debarment, suspension, or other legal impediments. For the Exhibits 6A, 6B Buy America certification form, this includes Buy America provisions ensuring that iron, steel, and manufactured goods used in the project are produced in the United States, basically promoting domestic industry. Now, typically when we have this document included in the solicitation, this document is a matter of responsiveness. So if the vendors do not provide this Exhibit 6A or 6B, they'll be deemed non-responsive. They can provide all the documents, but if this one is missing, they'll be deemed non-responsive. We also have restrictions on lobbying certification, and that certifies that no federal funds have been used to influence or attempt to influence federal officials or members of Congress. For the substance abuse testing certification, that ensures that the recipient has a substance abuse testing program in place just to ensure safety for their employees. For the transit vehicle manufacturer TVM certification of compliance form, that certifies that the transit vehicle manufacturer is compliant with the DVE program requirements. And lastly, we have the FTA supplement acknowledgement, and that document is also provided, and that acknowledges that the bidder understands and agrees to comply with the FTA requirements and guidelines, which are stipulated for FTA funded projects. On the screen now, I've listed some resourceful links that you can use where you can locate the county documents, the county FTA documents that I stated earlier. It's through the Purchasing BCNet page. We have a section within the procedural section that's titled FTA Procurement Forms. Once you select that, you'll be able to see all the FTA documents that are required for submission. I've also provided the FTA main webpage. We also have the third-party contracting guidance, the circular 4220.1F, and we'll dive into that later in the presentation. And we also have best practices procurement and lessons learned manual, which is here for you. Next,
Okay,
I will pass it on to Sonia to discuss the Surtax funded projects.
Thank you, Windelle. So, as Windelle detailed, there's a lot of requirements when it comes to FTA funds. And as I stated earlier, we use FTA funds for a lot of our purchases, specifically our buses. They also support a lot of our construction projects that we're doing. But another big funder for the Transportation Department is surtax funds. So back in 2018, the county enacted a Broward County Transportation Surtax for countywide transportation improvements. And it was put in place to reduce traffic congestion, improve roads and bridges, enhance traffic signals, develop safe sidewalks and bicycle pathways, expand and operate bus and special needs transportation, and to implement a rail along approved corridors. So we levied a 30-year 1% sales surtax that all of us as Broward County residents, if you're a Broward County resident, we happily give up that 1% so that we can support the transportation needs for our residents and visitors. And it's overseen by the Mobility Advancement Program called MAP. And we get approximately $450 million annually from that penny tax. So when solicitations are funded by surtax funds, there are fundamental requirements. There is that 30% CBE goal that we want to ensure that our small businesses and certified business enterprises are getting part of that money. There's an oversight board that oversees all programs or any use of surtax funds, and there is an ordinance compliance that must be met at all times. So let's take a look at some project highlights that the MAP program supports through our surtax funds. And hopefully you can hear it. Are we hearing?
No, we cannot.
I'm so sorry. Just a minute. Well, if you can't hear it, you sure can see it.
If you wanna, at the top of your screen, whoever's sharing, select include computer sound.
Okay, Windelle is the tech person on this. There we go. Thank you. while not totally overwhelming, but just a brief video to show how surtax funds are used in our community. It helps support our buses and also our paratransit services for disadvantaged people who residents within our community. It helps with those community buses that pick them up and take them to their various um, doctor's appointments and anything the way they need the paratransit services. And I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate about the surtax is the expansion of paratransit and the availability for vehicles to allow for the people in that community can utilize it. And there's other, of course, other things that the transportation surtax funds as far as a lot of our construction projects as well and improving our roads and also implementing some new exciting things that are coming forth with our Primo. And we'll talk a little bit about Primo a little bit later. And so as you're going to find a common theme that's going to run through everything that we do, it's FTA funded, surtax funded, or FDOT funded. We always want to make sure we ensure compliance with the requirements of those different programs. We ensure that there's goal participation requirements are met. We work hand in hand with OESBD to ensure that that 30% goal is met by our primes when we are utilizing surtax funds. And as always, maintain a record of all transactions to accurate monthly reporting. We want to make sure that we're able to report on everything that we utilize. Some resources regarding the MAP surtax is that there's a MAP surtax webpage, there's a program page, and there's also a surtax grant guidebook because surtax also gives a lot of money to our different municipalities throughout Broward County to help them do improvements within their communities. And there's a guidebook and shows them how they can utilize those funds. And there's also reporting that goes back to the surtax board. So there's a grants guidebooks that when we give funds to different cities on how they can utilize that fund. So surtax also grants money to our different municipalities. So that's surtax. That's one of our major funders, but also we get funding from the Florida Transportation Department, Florida Department of Transportation, and Windelle will give you a little information regarding FDOT.
Thank you very much. So on the screen now, we have some key programs that we utilize FDOT for. We have the County Incentive Grant Program. And this is typically used for any road expansion projects on major highways or roads, intersection upgrades at high traffic areas, or if they're trying to install any modern traffic management systems. We also use the local agency program, and these are typically for constructing bike lanes or sidewalks to improve safety for cyclists and pedestrians. If there are areas where they're implementing speed humps, roundabouts, and other traffic calming devices, they're typically using the local agency program. We also utilize Transportation Regional Incentive Program, and this is typically for developing or expanding regional bus or rail transit services, and that's to improve connectivity between cities or adding lanes to a regional highway. Also, our most common one that we utilize is the Transit Research Inspection Procurement Services. And we typically utilize this contract to purchase buses, so replace our aging vehicles. As Sonia was mentioning about surtax for the vans for paratransit services to ensure mobility for the elderly and disabled passengers. And additionally, we utilize it for other transit technology upgrades such as fare collection systems, GPS tracking, or other transit-related technologies. Now, how we ensure compliance with FDOT, as Sonia stated, a lot of the information is basically the same with ensuring compliance. You want to review your program requirements. Typically, there's a manual or some type of requirements guide, so we'll use that as well for FDOT. And you also want to maintain all records of all the transactions that you do, because you do have to provide regular progress reports to FDOT, surtax, whichever. And also one of the things that I learned through contracting with highway construction is that they utilize professional assistants. So a lot of their contracts, they'll include language from the consultants to provide assistance with ensuring compliance with FDOT funded projects. Now, one additional form that we look for when dealing with FDOT funded projects, and it's primarily with the CIGP, the County Incentive Grant Program, will receive an FDOT executed state funded grant agreement. And this grant agreement is executed by the representatives of FDOT, and it's also taken to the board for approval, and it's also executed by the board as well. And here we have some resourceful links for FDOT. So we have their main FDOT page and also the program page, which goes through the list of the key programs that I mentioned earlier. Take it away, Sonia, Primo.
So the beauty about transportation procurement is that they all come together specifically for this initiative that's going in our transportation department called Primo. It's a premium mobility plan. And this is where we combine FTA, surtax, and FDOT funds to bring 200 new miles of premium transportation services to the county. And it's supposed to go in 8 east-west corridors and 6 north to south corridors. And these projects would include multiple funding sources. Like I mentioned, it's going to be FDOT, surtax, and FTA, working together with Transit, Highway Construction, Engineering Division, Airport, and the Port to connect the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport, the Seaport, the Greater Fort Lauderdale Broward County Convention Center, and various other projects that will improve transportation in our county. It's going to bring different modes of transportation, such as commuter rail, light rail, bus rapid transit, high-frequency buses, and we're at the beginning stages of Primo. And however, it will be a $4.3 billion investment over the next 15 years. So that's going to keep us doing a lot of work for a good, I guess, through the rest of my career at least. And the full funding will come from a mix of federal, state, and local funds. And our Primo's commuter rail line is supposed to be the first project to come into service with anticipated opening of 2027. So we covered today the different types of what's so unique about transportation section in purchasing is just the various funding sources that we have and the different requirements that we must adhere to ensure that we are in compliance with our funders, and gives us that little extra checklist that we have to make sure that we tick the boxes to make sure that all of our solicitations are following these guidelines. And while a lot of folks get a little apprehensive about federal funds are very straightforward. They tell you exactly what you can and cannot do. And we always want to make sure that we are, like I said in the beginning, audit ready. When I first started with transportation, I think I was a month on the job, and I had to sit in a triennial audit that was being done by the feds. And there was a couple of things that we were dinged on, well, purchasing and the transportation department. And one of the things that I vowed is that the next time I have that we're not going to be dinged for missing a debarment form or not having the Buy America done. You know, these little things that will give us a poor rating on our audits. And so we want to make sure that we're covering all the documentation requirements and that we are in full compliance with all our funding sources. So Windelle will talk a little bit more about some important tips to remember if you're used for transportation, or if any, because I know quite a few of you in the purchasing department also do FTA funded solicitations and FDOT as well. So here are some important tips.
Thank you very much. So the most important one is that you want to make sure that you have all the required documents provided to purchasing. So again, if it was FTA, you have the additional documents. If it's FDOT, you have that executed state-funded agreement if necessary. If it's surtax, you have all the required surtax documents that you need. You want to make sure that you've read the program regulations to ensure compliance of the solicitations that you're putting out there in the streets. So again, if it's FTA, you want to make sure you've done your due diligence. You've spoken to the FTA compliance group. You know what documents you need to include in the solicitation. You went through that as your little checklist, and you can advertise the solicitation without any worry. As far as award, on the agency level, they want to ensure that they're compliant with the program requirements. If there are any goal requirements, you're compliant with the goal requirements, product or service requirements, as we stated with the Buy America, that the products have to be American made. If there are any other additional documentation or other requirements that are needed to be in compliant with the particular program that you are utilizing the funds for, you want to make sure that you're in compliant with that as well. Maintaining accurate records of transactions is a big one. As Sonia was saying, audit. It happens. When you're dealing with money that isn't yours, you want to make sure that you have a good audit trail, payment records, invoices, purchase orders, any type of receipts, financial transactions. You have all of that information. And you maintain a record for it of where you can find that information as well. Now, if you're piggybacking off of a contract utilizing any grant funds, you want to ensure that the originating solicitation and the contract complies with the grant program. So if it's FTA, you want to make sure that the original solicitation included the required FTA language, included the required FTA documents. Same thing with FDOT, that it all included that required documentation in order to be compliant while piggybacking, utilizing the funds. And also, you want to make sure that you remain knowledgeable. So sign up for any webinars, any trainings that are being offered, whether it be surtax, FDOT, or FTA. You attend any conferences. If there are any newsletters, sign up for those newsletters. And that way you can remain knowledgeable about what the requirements are for each program. And if anything changes, you can also let us know. And then if we have to update any of our documentation, then we can do so as well.
Thank you, Windelle. And so just so I want to thank you on behalf of the purchasing transportation team, myself, Windelle, Jermaine, Erica, Stacey Ann, Andrew, and Ayana. If there's any questions about federal requirements related to FTA, what's going on with the new Primo program, by all means, feel free to ask us. We're here to help and to provide guidance. I think that we're pretty much well-versed on the FTA requirements and FDOT and surtax, that if there's any questions about how to utilize those funds in your solicitation, any documents that you may need have questions about the proper use, by all means, reach out to anyone on my team, and we're more than happy to assist. And that's the end of our presentation. And are there any questions or anything that you need for us to reiterate, or anything that you have to say, please, by all means.
All right, thank you so much, Sonia and Windelle. Let's go ahead and give them a round of applause. Lots of great information, great presentation. If you guys have any questions for them, now's a great opportunity to go ahead and type those in the chat, and I'll take those as they come in. I'll just pause there for a second and give you an opportunity to do so. While I do that, I just want to remind you guys that today's session has been recorded for future viewing purposes. So if you want to go back and visit this or any other Lunch and Learns, feel free to go ahead and check out our Lunch and Learn playlist on the Purchasing Division YouTube channel, and you can review that information there as well. So I'm not seeing any questions right now in the chat. I'm guessing you guys are all still processing. Lots of good information, as I said. Sonia, what's the best way for them to reach out to the transportation section? Oh, there we go.
There you go.
If they have any questions. So on your screen there, you have Sonia Lovett's contact information, as well as Windelle Jean-Pierre's information. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to them. They are here to help you. Sonia, Windelle, any final thoughts?
No, oh, well, yeah, I guess yes. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Windelle, for putting this together with me. And always thank you to the purchasing division for allowing us to at least present to you some of the things that we do over here in the transportation section. And by all means, if there's any questions or anything that you need to know, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to help.
Thank you very much. It was great. Well put.
All right. Well, thank you guys for attending another great Lunch and Learn. Stay tuned for future sessions. We have been advertising them as well on the carousel, on the BCNet. So, and also on our events page, our purchasing division has an events page where we do list all of the Lunch and Learns, anything hot and upcoming for purchasing. So check us out there as well. Thank you guys for attending. Have a wonderful Friday Eve. Take care.